What are the SDGs? In 2015, world leaders of 193 member states of the United Nations agreed to 17 global goals, officially known as the Sustainable Development Goals and pronounced SDGs. These goals were carefully identified as having the potential to change the world by 2030 through poverty eradication, fighting inequality, and addressing the urgency of climate change. The 17 goals constitute of 169 targets and 230 indicators. The global goals are ambitious but achievable. It integrates all three aspects of sustainable development, and they are social, economic, and environmental.
Unlike the Millennium Development Goals, this has been a process that's been the most open, transparent, broad, deep one that we've had in the United Nations ever. This is where we have gone out to civil society, we've gone out to business, to parliamentarians.
Goal 1, no poverty. Goal 1 is to end poverty in all forms everywhere by 2035. There are 7 targets in Goal 1. In 2015, 736 million people lived in extreme poverty across the world. 56% of this population were in sub-Saharan Africa. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, and for the first time since the start of the SDGs, a Brookings report in March 2019 reports that more Africans were escaping extreme poverty than were falling or being born below the poverty line. Deliberate pro-poor policies were yielding impact across Africa. The March 2019 Brookings report showed that 367 Africans were escaping extreme poverty daily. It projected an increase by the end of 2019 to 3,000 people per day, which will eventually result in 1 million person reduction in total African poverty by 2020. The report went further to say that if broad trends continued, by 2030, Africa would reduce the ranks of its extremely poor by 45 million. Due to their population, 2 African countries, Nigeria and the Democratic Republic of Congo, presents the most significant challenges for reducing poverty in Africa. Combined, both countries represent more than 1/4 of total poverty in Africa today and are expected to represent almost half of Africa's poor by 2030. Report shows that while Nigeria and the DRC have challenges, the prospects looks bright for some countries who are making progress towards ending poverty. These countries already have poverty rates below 3%. Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Mauritius, and Seychelles. The projection is promising for 6 other African countries. Ethiopia is projected to lift 22 million people out of extreme poverty by 2030. Ghana is projected to lift approximately 2 million people out of poverty by 2030. Kenya will make a leapfrog and is projected to lift 3.5 million of its citizens out of poverty. Angola is currently experiencing a short-lived period where poverty is rising. If this trend can be reversed sooner, then the country also stands a great chance of fulfilling SDG 1. Côte d'Ivoire will also make substantial progress in poverty reduction. By 2030, 5.3 million of its citizens are projected to be out of poverty. The Djibouti, the smallest country in this set of poverty-reducing economies, is projected to reduce relative poverty from 14.2% to 4.6%, lifting over 80,000 of its citizens out of poverty by 2030. Prior to COVID-19, if current trends had continued without disruption, Ethiopia and Kenya were projected to achieve SDG 1 by 2032. Ghana, Angola, and Côte d'Ivoire in 2033, while the Djibouti will follow a year later in 2034. Pre-COVID, the world was off track to end poverty by 2030, with a global poverty rate in 2019 of 8.2%. According to the SDG report of 2020, COVID-19 has negatively impacted on Goal 1's progress as a result of increased poverty due to job losses and economic lockdown, and secondly, disproportionate impact on vulnerable groups. An intervention that successfully moves several households out of the poverty bracket is social protection programs. Only 45% of the world's population is covered by at least one social protection cash benefit. The remaining 55% have been left behind. Africa has 13% of its population covered by at least one form of social protection benefit, and 13% of its children covered by social protection systems. Due to the pandemic, domestic lockdowns in poor countries would rob the poor of their meager daily revenue, thereby causing a rise in poverty and hunger. The poverty rate in Africa has gone down, but the number of people living in poverty has increased, and global poverty will increasingly become African. Future landscape: what is the way forward? Data gaps exist and it is problematic. Where data exists, it is not comprehensive nor consistent. The absence of these critical data sets makes it difficult in Africa to effectively plan interventions that address poverty. Reducing poverty in African countries remains an unfinished agenda, and COVID-19 threatens to move Africa further off track the SDG targets. To rebuild, Albert Zufak, Chief Economist for Africa at the World Bank, says, and I quote, "It is important to ensure that fiscal policy builds in space for social protection interventions, especially targeting workers in the informal sector, and sows the seed for future resilience of our economies. There is a need for social protection measures, including social assistance transfer funds, to fill existing poverty gaps and raise more vulnerable people to a minimum income base. In the medium to long term, according to an OECD report, in partnership with the international community, governments should continue to strengthen health systems and extend health and social protection coverage to all." UNC's faculty and research engaging with this goal. Evidence shows that direct cash transfers have greater poverty impacts than subsidies. Professor Handa Sudhanshu is Kenan Eminent Professor of Public Policy at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. He is one of the principal investigators for a UNICEF-funded project called the Transfer Project. The Transfer Project is a multi-country research initiative on the impact of national cash transfer programs on households and children in sub-Saharan Africa. Using research, Professor Handa and his team provide evidence on the effectiveness of large-scale national cash transfer programs in Africa. Using the same evidence through dialogue and learning with stakeholders, inform the development of cash transfer and social protection policies and programs in 10 African countries. In conclusion, for sustainable development to be achieved, it is crucial to harmonize 3 core elements: economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental protection. For the goals to be met, everyone needs to do their part. Academic and research institutions, governments, the private sector, civil society, bilateral and multilateral institutions, the development community, and the general public. To learn more about the SDGs in Africa, please visit www.sdgcafrica.org.